Good evening. I'll call the City Council meeting to order. Our prayer tonight is Mr. Bill Shacklett in our pledge.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I want to introduce someone to you tonight to do our prayer. There's a special event happening in our town this weekend, and I've invited Ralph Vaughn to come and tell you a little bit about what's happening and do our opening prayer. Ralph?
Good evening. There are two reasons why I am here this evening. First and foremost, I am a Christian, and I am honored to have been asked to have the opening prayer, to pray over this meeting, and also, secondly, I'm on the board of directors of Uncle Dave Bacon Days. And for the older folks in the crowd, which includes me, you remember Ed Sullivan on television many years ago with the Ed Sullivan Show, who always, in a somewhat accentuated voice, would say, "We have a really big show." Well, we have a really big show coming up starting tomorrow. The highlight of tomorrow evening will be 88-year-old Ralph Stanley. Dr. Ralph Stanley and the Clinch Mountain Boys will be getting our Heritage Award. If you don't know bluegrass music, he is an icon. He ranks up there with Bill Monroe. And we'll be giving him the Heritage Award. Then Saturday night, one of the highlights will be a bluegrass band called Still Drivers. They're based in Nashville. And right now, they have the #1 album in the country for bluegrass music. So we have a really big show. So if you will, join me now for prayer. Lord, we praise you. Your name is hallowed, Lord. Not only is your name hallowed, you're magnificent, you're marvelous, you're wonderful. All of the accolades, all of the adjectives we could think of are due you because you're above all other. You are omnipotent and you're omnipresent. Lord, that means you're here right now. And we're honored to stand in your presence. Lord, we pray for this city council. We pray for decisions that will be made. We pray for clarity of mind. We pray for purity of heart for all of us. And we pray for the Uncle Dave Bacon Days. Lord, may we represent this community. May we hold up the banner of Christ. And may we display hospitality, warmth, and genuine interest in others as we present this program this weekend. Lord, everything that's done here tonight, everything that's done this weekend, by the respective entities, we pray will bring honor to you because you deserve all of the praise, all of the honor that we could ever give. And we say this in Jesus' name, our Lord and our Savior. Amen.
Amen. You'll join me for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was awesome. There's people in here. It was a strong pledge.
Our next item is a presentation of the STARS Award.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Young, members of the Murfreesboro City Council, staff, and honored guests. I have the high honor and privilege this evening of introducing to you our next STARS Award winner. And a number of folks in attendance tonight may not be aware that we recognize city employees by virtue of succeeding through service excellence. We've had this program in place about 3.5 years, and I am just delighted and privileged to be able to present this evening's recipient. This evening we're presenting the award to Officer Ryan Hollabaugh, who is with us this evening from the Murfreesboro Police Officer Patrol Division, and you'll notice, of course, he's a canine officer. I'd like to read the nomination that was made on his behalf by a coworker of his, Ms. Amber Smith. On May 20th, 2015, Officer Hollabaugh was en route to canine training on the interstate and came upon a motor vehicle crash with injuries. One of the vehicles had flames coming from the engine. Officer Hollabaugh put out the fire with his extinguisher and pulled the two occupants out of the vehicle and stayed with them until other agencies got on scene and took over. This shows great commitment to help and assist others in difficult times and should not go unnoticed. Officer Hollabaugh is certainly a credit to the profession and to our agency. At this time, I'd like to invite Vice Mayor Young to make the formal award presentation to Officer Hollabaugh and his invited guest. Vice Mayor Young.
We're here to congratulate you. You're the best of the best. you do your duty, and your peers recognize that you do your duty well. So on behalf of the council and the citizens of Murfreesboro, I'd like to congratulate you and present you the Stars Award. Now you got to make a speech.
Oh, no. Well, I don't have much to say, but it sounded a lot cooler when they read it than it was out there. We do that stuff every day, and I just happen to be the one that somebody wrote in a letter for. So thank all y'all, my coworkers, and it's good this day and age for the police to get some positive recognition. So thank you.
Thank you again, officers in the police department that are here tonight. We appreciate what you do, and so many times you're underappreciated. But they're there when we need us. They're there when we need them. Thank you again. Our next item is a consent agenda. Council, is there any items on this that we need to pull and discuss? Staff? Hearing none. A motion is in order.
I'll move we approve it.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Our next item of business is approve the minutes of special meetings of May 28th, June the 4th, June the 4th, June the 11th, June the 11th, June the 11th, June 18th, June 18th, and June 25th. Are there any additions, corrections to this minutes?
I'll move that we approve the special and regular meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
Yeah.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Our next item is third readings. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 15 OZ 33 to rezone an area at 1508 and 1512 East Main Street to commercial fringe district.
Move for passage.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Our next item is move for passage of third and final reading of 15 OZ 34 to rezone an area at 417, 419, and 427 East Burton Street to general office residential OGR district.
Move for approval. Second.
Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Next item is second readings. Consider for passage on second reading ordinance 15.
Mayor,
You skipped one.
Did I skip?
item 5.
I sure did, didn't I? Pardon me. Consider passage on third and final reading ordinance 1502, amending the Murfreesboro City Code, Chapter 32, Traffic Section 32, 1014, regulating the height of motorcycle handbars.
Move for approval on third reading.
Second.
Motion and
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Vice Mayor Young.
aye. Next item is second readings. Consider for passage on second reading ordinance 15043, amending the Murfreesboro City Code, Chapter 2, Administration, Section 210, regarding the city's procurement code.
Move for approval.
Second.
That's right.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Our next item is consider for passage on second reading ordinance 15044, amending the 2015-2016 budget.
Move for approval.
Second.
Is right.
Ms. Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Our next item is pursuant to Resolution 15OZR38, adopted by the City Council on June 4th, 2015, to conduct a public hearing to consider an PRD amendment for approximately 35 acres in a planned residential district located along the west side of St. Andrews Drive in Evergreen Farm Subdivision, 2015-410, Old South Properties, Inc., applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the June 22, 2015 issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Young, and good evening, Vice Mayor Young and members of the City Council. Our first public hearing tonight is with regards to 35.9 acres along the west side of St. Andrews Drive. It's the area colored orange on the map in front of you. It's a part of the Evergreen Farms planned residential development. It's zoned PRD. And this is the section of the PRD that was called Evergreen Commons in the PRD that was approved back in 2004. Evergreen Commons, which is now more commonly known as the Villas at Evergreen Farms, was the single-family attached portion of the Evergreen Farms PRD. And when I say single-family attached, in this case it means townhome condominium units. When the plan was submitted to the Planning Commission and the City Council back in 2004, when this was originally approved, and I'll show you the 2004 approved plan. As you can see, it's a little bit of a general conceptual layout that was submitted at that time. It showed a maximum of 280 single-family attached units in this portion of the planned residential development. The developer, Old South Properties, began developing this particular portion of the PRD, and due to market conditions, started modifying their product so that in some of the buildings they were building 5 units attached, whereas originally they were planning to build 4 units attached to each other. As the years went by, those 5-unit attached buildings started adding up, and the number of units in this section of the PRD was slowly approaching the maximum 280 dwelling units that was approved as a part of the PRD zoning. Well, this past spring, staff noticed that they were getting to that point of being at the 280 units with still a section or two yet to be built. So we brought that to the attention of the developer and of his engineer, that 280 was the maximum number of units that was approved, and he subsequently submitted a request to amend the PRD to build out a maximum of 334 single-family attached units in this component of the PRD, an increase of 54 dwelling units over the 2004 approved PRD plan. It's also an increase in 3 buildings from 70 to 73, so a total of 73 buildings and 334 units. With the total site acreage being 35.9 acres, the density increased from 7.8 dwelling units per acre to 9.3 dwelling units per acre. As I mentioned, the developer has indicated that this was that they changed their building style due to market conditions, and that is the reason for the change in the number of dwelling units. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter on May 6th and deferred it at that time after there were some current concerns regarding density and parking at the public hearing. Mr. Dan Bobo with Old South Properties then compiled some additional information to address the Planning Commission's concerns, and this came back up to the Planning Commission at its May 20th regular meeting, and the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of this PRD amendment to the City Council. Mr. Bobo, in his letter to the Planning Commission, indicated that the parking requirements were being met once you take into consideration the driveway parking spaces, the actual striped parking spaces, and the garage parking spaces. And also he pulled together some numbers of some similar developments to compare the density to, and at 9.3 dwelling units per acre, it's less than 4 other similar developments that he used as an example, those being the cottages at Indian Park, Puckett Downs, the villas at Indian Creek, and Florence Village 2. With that being said, as I mentioned, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this request unanimously. I did want to bring to the City Council's attention that I did include a letter that we received in the mail from a resident of the Evergreen Farm subdivision who is opposed to this request, Joseph Hurley at 3307 Perlino Drive, and that is in your agenda materials. But with that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions either before or after the public hearing. And Mr. Dan Bobo at this time would like to come to the microphone and say a few words before you open the public hearing.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, and thank you, Vice Mayor Young and members of the Planning Commission.
Mr. Bobo, could I have your address, please?
My personal address is 4721 Las Casas Pike.
Yes, sir.
And my name is Dan Bobo with All South Properties. Appreciate Mr. Blomey's presentation. He covered most of the information. The only thing that I would like to add is sort of the timing of the development, and as we submitted plans for phases 4 and 5, when staff recognized that we were about to exceed our maximum number of units. To date, phase 1 began construction in 2006 approximately. Phase 2 began development work in 2008, 2009, but obviously that slowed way down. And phase 2 is actually just now getting to where we have one more building and it will be built out. Phase 3 development work is complete. We have begun vertical construction. And on phase 4 and phase 5, once we realized that we were exceeding our number of units, we stopped the engineering work on it. No work has been done in the field, no development work, and we stopped the engineering until we could get our application to you guys and you guys consider our application to amend the PRD. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Before we open the public hearing, I'd like to give you our rules for public hearing, and this will apply to all of public hearings tonight. Please come to the podium and state your name and address. We ask you to speak no more than 3 minutes unless you're a spokesman for a group, because there's a lot of people here tonight and they may want to speak. Please address all your comments to the council, and at the end of the hearing, we will attempt to answer the comments. Each person will be allowed only to speak once. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Please come forward if you'd like to speak. Anyone? With that, I'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the council?
Let me ask one question just for my own education, just to make sure I understand. Mr. Blomey, could I ask? The consideration of the garage and the driveway as 2 allotted spaces, is that pretty common practice?
For condominium townhome type developments, yes, it is. We do actually, in our zoning ordinance, make provisions for garages to count count towards required parking, as long as those garages are to be devoted to the parking of vehicles. Now, Mr. Bobo did indicate in his materials that he submitted, and this has been included, it's from the covenants. It says that residential units with a garage shall utilize the unit's driveway and garage as 2 allotted parking spaces. So that's in the covenants. Whether or not actually on the ground, it's actually, that's the way if people are actually abiding by that, I can't say for certain. But in our zoning ordinance, we do make provisions to count the garage spaces.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Mr. Bromley or Mr. Lane?
If there's no more questions, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, would you please call the roll?
Harris. Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Thank you. Our next item is consider for passage on first reading ordinance number 15OZ38 to amend the conditions applicable to an area located along the west side of St. Andrews Drive in Evergreens Farm, PRD.
Move for approval.
Second.
Wait, it's a,
We've already approved it.
Okay, so I'm really skipping them
All right.
tonight, aren't I?
Same thing.
Yeah. Well, you want to do another public hearing? See if we can get some results. Okay. All right. No, yes, ma'am. The next item is pursuant to Resolution 15OZR39, adopted by the City Council on June 11th, 15, to conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately .46 acres located along the east side of Highland Avenue from duplex residential RD district to single-family residential RS4 district. Rutherford County Habitat for Humanity applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the June 22nd issue of the local newspaper.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Young. Our second public hearing tonight is for the rezoning of two parcels located along the east side of South Highland Avenue, more specifically at the northeast corner of South Highland and Reed Avenue. Those properties are currently zoned RD, which is duplex residential, and the applicants have requested that those two parcels be rezoned to RS4, which is single-family residential with a minimum lot size of 4,000 square feet. As you mentioned, Rutherford County Habitat for Humanity is the applicant. Rutherford County Habitat for Humanity builds primarily single-family detached homes, and that is what they desire to do on these parcels as well. However, under the current zoning of RD, the minimum lot size for a single-family residential home is 8,000 square feet. The total land area in these two parcels is a little over 20,000 square feet. So, with 8,000 square feet as the minimum lot size, it does not allow them enough land area in order to create three separate buildable lots for single-family residential homes. So they have made a request to rezone the property to RS4, which would allow them to subdivide the property into three lots with a minimum lot size of 4,000 square feet. And just on a side note, this property is also located in the City Core Overlay District, which the City Council adopted several years ago, which provides additional flexibility for new homes and redevelopment in the downtown area to allow setbacks to be closer to the street to more approximate the existing development that is in the area. So the applicant has made his request to rezone the property to RS4. The adjacent zoning to the north and to the east is RD, and there is a mixture of single-family residential and two-family residential uses in that area. And to the west, directly across South Highland Avenue, is a large area of RS4 zoning, which is primarily single-family residential. So it is directly adjacent to an RS4 zoning classification and is consistent with the zoning in the area. I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing. Mr. Roy Saylor with Rutherford County Habitat for Humanity is in attendance if you have any questions for him as well.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Blomley before we open the public hearing? Okay, with that, we'll open the public hearing and invite anyone to come to the podium and speak for or against this. Anyone at all? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Let me say something. Habitat for Humanity has made a tremendous impact, and Madeline knows this, on the south side of our town in housing I don't know how many projects they've done, probably
125.
a bunch. And they have really transformed that area from low rent housing and landlord stuff to home ownership. And I have to really thank the late Ms. Beth Smith for taking that initiative on, and the board members, and now Terry Sterling. I want to call them out because they really look to transform that area of town into home ownership, and it's really made a difference. From crime and this and all kind of dysfunctional attitudes, they don't really realize how much I appreciate in my almost 20-some odd years of being in public service to them. So I want to take this time to let you know what they have really done for that side of town, or wherever they show up, in Smyrna, or Rutherford County, wherever, but especially in the lower income parts of town, they really help turn that thing around.
Is that a motion?
And I move for approval.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Ms. Wright, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. All right. Ms. McGannon, is our next item B? Okay, good, because I did that a minute ago, and I don't want to do it again. Our next item is pursuant to Resolution 15-OZR40, adopted by the City Council on June 11th, 2015, to conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately 6.17 acres located at the southwest corner of Medical Center Parkway and Robert Rose Drive from mixed use, MU, district to highway commercial district. Mr. Tommy Smith, applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the June 22nd issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Young. Property is located at the southwest corner of Medical Center Parkway and Robert Rose Drive. 6.17 acres, as you mentioned. It's currently zoned MU mixed use and was actually rezoned from commercial highway to MU back in 2013 at the request of the same applicant. If you'll recall, back in 2013, we adopted the mixed-use zone, and there were a number of properties in the gateway that were rezoned to MU at that time, and Mr. Smith had requested that his property be included in the MU zone as well. Well, since that time, Mr. Smith has fine-tuned how he intends to develop the property, and it turns out there are some incompatibilities with the MU zone and how he wants to develop the property. The way in which he wants to develop the property is really more consistent with the commercial highway zone rather than the MU zone. It appears that it will be more commercial uses as opposed to a mixture of residential and commercial uses, similar to what we are going to be seeing along the north side of Medical Center Parkway as well at this intersection. Mr. Smith has made application to mixed-use zoning because of two reasons. One reason is one of the lots he wants to create is a flag lot, and the zoning ordinance is silent on flag lots in the MU zone. The second reason is because there is a minimum lot width of 200 feet along arterial streets for lots created in the MU zone. And there's a lot that he wishes to create along Medical Center Parkway that will not meet that minimum 200-foot lot width. Therefore, because the type of development that he is looking to create resembles more commercial highway than mixed use, and because the commercial highway will accommodate the lot configuration, he has requested the rezoning back to commercial highway, which was the zoning designation for this property prior to its rezoning to mixed use in 2013. The surrounding property is, there's a mixture of commercial highway and mixed use zone across Robert Rose Drive along the east side, both north and south of Medical Center Parkway, is zoned mixed use, as is the northwest corner of this intersection. Directly to the south is zoned mixed use, and it's where the Everwood at the Avenue apartment complex will be developing. in the near future. To the west of the subject property is an undeveloped area zoned mixed use, as well as area zoned commercial highway with Peter D's and the Avenue Shopping Center. One thing that I want to make sure to point out to the City Council is that the property will remain located in the Gateway Design Overlay District Number 1. So in terms of the quality that the City Council would see from the development of this property, the quality would not decrease, as it will still be held to the minimum design requirements that are required throughout the Gateway Design Overlay District. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing. Mr. Tommy Smith is here if you have any questions for him, as is his design engineer, Mr. Matt Taylor. And the Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing on this matter on June the 3rd and recommended its approval unanimously.
Any questions for Mr. Bromley before we...
Could you define flag lot real quick for us?
Sure. Flag lot is kind of a planning and zoning term where we have a lot that essentially looks like a flag, that flares out in the back but has somewhat of an appendage that goes out to the street. So it meets its minimum road frontage requirements, but has a the flag portion is at the rear of the lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bromley. Any more questions for Mr. Bromley before we... All right. With that, we'll open the public hearing and invite anyone to come and speak for or against this. Anyone at all? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Move for passage.
Second.
Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Our next item, pursuant to Resolution 15OZ-R41, adopted by the City Council on June 11, 2015, to conduct a public hearing to consider zoning approximately 21.6 acres along Joe B. Jackson Parkway from light industrial LI district to heavy industrial HI district. Mr. John Harney on behalf of the Elam Road Partnerships applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the June 22nd issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Young. Our fourth and final public hearing tonight is for the rezoning of 21.6 acres located along the south side of Joe B. Jackson Parkway. It's colored orange on the map before you. It's currently zoned light industrial LI, and the applicant, Mr. Harney, has requested the rezoning of this property to HI, heavy industrial. As you can see, it is located just to the east of the I-24 interchange. Directly to the west of the subject property is a small commercial zoned subdivision, which I believe the only structure that's gone vertical in that subdivision so far is a subway. So this is directly adjacent to the subdivision with the subway to its east. To the south of the subject property is zoned heavy industrial, and it's the NHK Seating Company. And further to the southeast of the subject property is Amazon, also zoned HI. And further to the east is the Parkway Place, I believe, planned industrial development. And then further to the east of that is the Magnolia Trace subdivision. Directly across Joe B. Jackson Parkway to the north is the Elam Farms subdivision, which is developed with warehouse-type uses, and directly across the street from the Elam Farms development on Elam Farms Parkway is the Schwann Cosmetics facility, which is under construction. Both Elam Farms and Schwann Cosmetics are zoned light industrial. And then there are some other light industrial uses on the north side of Joe B. Jackson Parkway, including Pretoria, Perfect Equipment, and Interstate Warehousing. The Magnolia Trace subdivision, as well as the Sunset Ridge residential development are both approximately 2,000 to 2,500 feet as the crow flies from the subject property to the east. As I mentioned, the property to the south is zoned heavy industrial, and NHK Seating is located on it. When the applicant made this request initially, he indicated that there was a auto parts manufacturer that was interested in the property, and that was the reason why he had made application to the HI zoning classification, because auto parts manufacturer is only permitted in the HI zone and is not permitted in the LI zone. Well, after the Planning Commission held its public hearing on June 3rd and voted unanimously to recommend approval to the City Council of this rezoning request, Mr. Harney, the applicant, informed city staff that the auto parts manufacturer was no longer interested in purchasing or developing the property. However, he did wish to continue pursuing the rezoning of this property from light industrial to heavy industrial. And so we are tonight to hold a public hearing on this matter. During the Planning Commission public hearing, there was some discussion regarding uses that are permitted in the heavy industrial zoning district. And there was some discussion about uses that are permitted by right and uses that are permitted by special use permit. And I've put, just for the City Council's clarification, I've put a list of uses that are permitted. I've typed up all of the uses permitted by special use permit, and that should be up at your desks. I believe there were 37 uses that are allowed only by special use permit in the HI zoning classification. And I won't go over those. You have those in front of you. But just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of the process that they would have to go through in order to obtain a special use permit, they would have to make application through the Planning Department to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then the Board of Zoning Appeals would hold a public hearing on the application, at which time the public would have an opportunity to speak and voice any concerns about the request. In their application to the Board of Zoning Appeals, they would have to prove that they met certain standards in order to be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals, after holding the public hearing, would determine whether or not they felt that the applicant was meeting the standards in order to be able to establish that particular use on the property. So I did want to let you know, as we indicated to the Planning Commission, that there are certain uses that are allowed by special use permit, but they would have to undergo a review and public hearing by the Board of Zoning Appeals before they would be able to move forward with those uses. The adjacent heavy industrial rezoning where NHK and Amazon are located have been zoned heavy industrial since 2000. There was a large tract of land that was zoned. I believe it was over 400 acres, part of which was zoned at that time in 2000 for heavy industrial zoning. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions either before or after the public hearing. Mr. Matt Taylor with SEC is here. He has a brief PowerPoint presentation that he would like to give to the City Council before the public hearing. Yes.
I don't know if you can put that map back up there, but if you continue on beyond the Amazon Center away from this site, so on past this map right here, my battery ran out on my other iPad here, but if you go on past that, it looks like there's some land in between Amazon's property line and then this neighborhood to the kind of the southeast, I guess that'd be. What is that?
That is, if you can see at the very bottom of the screen, almost off the screen, there is a label that says PID. That's Planned Industrial Development. And it was, I believe it was initially passed by the City Council in 2008, and then it was subsequently amended. Some changes were adopted 2 or 3 years ago. That planned industrial development, I believe, has 4 quadrants. Each quadrant allows different intensities of uses, and it's my recollection that the further you get back into the property is where the more heavy industrial type uses are permitted. The closer you are to Joe B. Jackson on that tract, the lighter or the less intense the uses are. And that's currently undeveloped at this time.
Mr. Taylor, ready? Any other questions? Mr. Blum? We may have more questions for you later, Mr. Blum.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Young and members of the City Council. I'm Matt Taylor of SEC, located here on Middle Tennessee Boulevard here in town. I do have a brief presentation for you on our proposed rezoning application. As Mr. Blomley so well put it, our property is just over 21 acres in size, located along the southern side of Joe B. Jackson. We have made this application originally, as Mr. Blomley said, due to a specific user that was interested in property, and since that time they've dropped out. However, we would like to continue this request because we have multiple other users that would fall in the same sort of category that have been interested over the years, and we would like for this property to be developed ready, just like Amazon and NHK both were. That really helped those projects to get some feet and get off the ground even during the recession that we all just went through. We furthermore believe that this request helps realize the rest of the vision that has been along Joe B. Jackson for the past 25 or 30 years. I believe that was first started with a land use plan that designated this area as an employment center for Murfreesboro back in the 80s at some point. And of course that further started to come to realization whenever we had the Joe B. Jackson interchange created and the roadway constructed, and some of these initial zonings took place out here to give us the heavy industrial, light industrial, and some of the commercial highway, all non-residential uses that we've seen to come to fruition along Joe B. Jackson over the past 15 to 20 years. As Mr. Blomley said, just wanted to start by orienting you to the site. And you can see within a half mile, the red circle, there's only a handful of residences, and all those are buffered from our property by multiple other properties. This proposed site does not touch any residential property. It's all heavy industrial, roadway, or commercial highway properties around our property. It's not until you get out to the 3/4 mile radius and 1 mile radius that you start getting into residential homes. The existing zonings in the area, again, go back to that original land use plan. You got heavy industrial to the south, which NHK and Amazon were both developed on. Past that, you've got the planned industrial development that Mr. Blomley just referenced, which has a multitude of allowable uses in there, including many that are compatible with the heavy industrial zone. And then to the north, you've got light industrial, before you get back to residential. As you can see, all these non-residential uses and zonings effectively buffer our property from any other potentially residential properties in the area. And then again, just the uses in the area. You've got the subway, interstate warehousing, Pretoria, Perfect Equipment. You've got a Dollar General down the road, Schwann Cosmetics, and I think that the gas station on the north side of Elam Road and Joe B. Jackson is currently under construction as well. So we really see this as fitting well with our side of the road, the south side, which is sandwiched between Joe B. Jackson, a major arterial, and I-24. And at the same time, with this property, we envision a access that aligns with Elam Farms Parkway, which will maintain our access control, traffic control up and down Joe B. Jackson. That's been a consistent theme for this planned roadway. And that will allow us to continue to control the traffic flow along here. Again, I'm Matt Taylor. I'm accompanied by Mr. John Harney, one of the applicants on the project. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have now or later.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Taylor, Amazon and NHK. Yeah, they're located next door.
Yes, sir. NHK is directly next door to us, and then Amazon is on the other side of NHK, closer to the existing residential to the southeast.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Ms. Scales Harris?
A couple of questions. Can you put that back up on the screen, please?
Which one would you like to see?
The one with the orange, the little annex part,
That
right
one?
there. Yes.
Okay.
The one outlined in yellow. That's what we're talking about annexing, right?
No.
I mean,
Zoning, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, zoning. Okay. In my research, years ago, the part in the orange came before the council, and that was approved with no problem. Okay. The little part we're talking about in the yellow, was that just an oversight of the property owners that at that time they didn't want that part annexed?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you. That was in 2000, and I wasn't associated with that particular request.
Okay.
I believe that it was because actually we all believed anything south of
Right.
Joe B. Jackson was heavy industrial until we started doing our due diligence on that particular project.
Right, when I was just researching, it just didn't make sense that that little part was still a part of the orange but wasn't annexed. Rezone, I'm sorry.
And it may have had to do with that the orange, the heavy industrial, was a single larger tract, and this was a separate
Right.
tract, so you may have had a different applicant for that.
And I think I understood you to say when you first started, as far as the residents, we were talking about a half a mile to a mile from.
Yes, ma'am.
And so therefore, in looking at the information you gave us tonight about commercial and all, in that area, and I'm just looking at some of the things that can go there, these businesses, it's not going to be any noise, no smoke. According to
I believe
what
in
I'm
the
looking
heavy
at.
industrial, anything that creates excess noise or smoke or residue has to go through that special use permit. Mr. Blomley can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that's what really triggers the special use.
Thank you, Matt.
Any other questions? Mr. Taylor, we'll reserve the right to call you back up for additional questions. Thank you. With that, we'll open the public hearing. Invite anyone to come and speak for or against this.
How many people are here on this issue?
They can't do that. They can't do that.
And I'm not speaking as a representative because you're selling a Brooklyn Bridge. You give 2 minutes and nobody else can talk. So
3 minutes, sir.
I'm sorry. Keith Jones, 127 Tenby Drive. I apologize. Okay, we're not playing a game of not in my backyard here. I'm really only here to ask for more time because I think you have a wonderful opportunity here, and if you pass a rezoning like this, you're undercutting the opportunity and you're losing it. There are only 2 reasons I can see. By the way, you have my comments. When you cut me off, at least they'll be on my website and you'll have what I say. There are only 2 reasons to rezone. 1, the original rezoning was in error, or 2, times have changed and this zoning is obsolete. Neither one of these is true here. This area is overwhelmingly residential, and I saw that circle of a mile. That's not the way I measure this. My house is probably 3,000 feet from this. I believe when I did my measurements on Google Maps, Magnolia Trace, Sunset Ridge, Del Sol, Summersby are all about 3,000 feet away. If you extend it out to 1.5 miles, you're taking in part of Stevens Bend, Irby Lane, Coldstream, and 12 Oaks. Your only argument for this rezoning that I've ever heard is that you set a precedent because you got 2 parcels in there that are zoned heavy industry. And you admitted they were done in 2000. Well, you rezoned the houses. My house was built in 1999. The 2 houses at the end of 10B, right where Amazon is, those were in there in 1999. I've been on Zillow. There were a couple houses in Magnolia Trace built in 2000, but these houses were there and you knew the plan. basically you rezone heavy industry next to residential uses, which is a really dumb idea. And I talked to planners in 19 other cities in this thing. I did. It's on my website. You can read the comments. And I don't think there's one of them that says it's a really great idea to rezone heavy industry next to residential. And you have this marvelous 20-foot buffer, which is about a quarter of a stolen base, and not even a first down if we're playing football. And you think this allows you to put heavy industry wherever you want. That makes you, on my list of cities that protect homes from industry, dead last. So let's look at the arguments against this rezoning. One, your whole zoning ordinance is designed to protect homeowners from heavy industry like this by having a category called light industry. It means no smoke, no noise, no odor, no vibrations, but you're destroying it. Because as soon as you grant this rezoning, you're telling everybody in town, if you don't like light industry, come to us and we'll let you out. You can opt out. Second, you're going against the wishes of the people of this town. I have been out since May. I was out from May 11th to June 1st, and I was collecting signatures on the petition. And I would say I talked to 1,000 people, which is not a random sample, but it's about a third of what a Gallup sample is. And 50% blew me off, and about 50% signed. As soon as I showed them this list of things that could go in, the standard response was, I wouldn't want that in my backyard. And I can understand why they feel that way. That's why they're here tonight. Now, I did explain the S and the X. I used a little different term. I said you had to file a site plan. But I did explain it. The only time I didn't explain it when I was collecting signatures was when somebody was willing to sign right away or somebody blew me off. Okay, I think you need more time to look at this. I think your ordinance is a mess. Some of the uses that can go in without a use permit are these things: a steel or aluminum plant, primary metal manufacturing. And I asked what they were from a staff member, so that's what they told me. Chemical manufacturing, fertilizer. A fertilizer plant blew up in Texas in 2013. Factory plastics making, paints, and all the sex uses. All these don't require. They go in automatically. Now, there was a big deal made at the Planning Commission on this idea of the second layer of review. I think it's a red herring. The first thing is, I'm going to give you two examples. I've read all the conditions in there. Basically, they're mitigating conditions on things that aren't very mitigatable. One is a fireworks factory. Here's a sample of it. You have to be within 500 feet of a fire hydrant. Okay, a fireworks factory within 500 feet of a fire hydrant is still a fireworks factory. Now, the landfill, everybody knows they call it Mount Trashmore, and I realize it's a county landfill, but it passes everything that you have on your use permit. It has limited hours of operation. It has what else? It complies with all state and federal laws, and yet people out there hate the thing. So this use permit thing it seems a little bit overblown to me. Now, the other thing is,
sir, can you bring this to an end?
I will bring it to an end. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll skip the whole bit, and I'll just tell you what I think. I think your model ought to be Knoxville. You have 4 zones. You get rid of this whole light zoning, which is defined as specific uses that you can't have NHK in light and industrial because of the definitions. Just call them I-1 through I-4. I'm supporting what your consultant says. It looks to me like he's saying we want business parks out there. That would be marvelous. It would do 2 things. It would promote what the mayor says of making this a livable community. What?
Let's please wrap this up.
I am wrapping it up. And it would also address Mr. Smotherman's complaint that we're not attracting enough white-collar jobs. That's why I'm asking for for you to do a moratorium on this thing. Address and wait to hear what your consultant says about these business parks, and that is the way to go here.
Thank you, sir.
And you got to read the rest of my comments on my site.
Who'd like to be next?
Good evening. My name is William Anderson, 509 Uri Road here in Murfreesboro. I'm kind of new to the area, and I live, I think, based on that map, to the northwest, just over the new flybridge that terminates right into a residential area, by the way. According to the map, it only showed about 5 houses, I think, within that 3/4 mile radius. But what it didn't show was right outside of that 1 mile radius are 3 subdivisions to the west of Interstate 24. I'm concerned if it's rezoned to heavy industrial that it will bring the smoke and the noise and the environmental concerns, considering there's a river just adjacent that runs parallel with 24. So I'm not here to judge the board or the city council or any residents. I just ask that I think the light industrial would bring some white-collar jobs to the community, and I would request that the council not approve the heavy industrial zoning. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Janice Mullins, excuse me, and I live at 106 Ramsey Road, and I am a teacher also, and I have not heard it mentioned that within each side of this parkway there is a city school, Black Fox Elementary, and to the other side, 1/2 mile from my driveway, which is Magnolia Trace, is Whitworth Buchanan Middle School, and then a little farther there is another elementary school. My concern is with elementary and middle school children, environmental pollution, also traffic. I think that's a real concern there. I also am concerned if we're only trying to get blue-collar jobs. And the third one, I would like to know, what are the advantages of this rezoning? I appreciate your time. I hope you will reconsider. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor, City Council members. My name is David Lepp. I live at 110 Mannon Court, which is in Magnolia Trace subdivision. My home is, as the crow flies, less than 3,000 feet by my best guesstimate to the property in question. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to this. I want to give you a little background about myself. I sell tools to manufacturing companies. NHK is one of my customers. Perfect Equipment is one of my customers. Amazon is one of my customers. Nissan, all 3 Nissan plants are my customers. I understand what goes on in a manufacturing plant. I understand the noise, the emissions that come from that plant, noise being one of those emissions. As a homeowner in this area, when I'm at home on the weekends, the last thing I want to be invaded with is noise and vibration. And I can tell you when Amazon does a shift change, I hear it on an intercom, and I'm 3,000 feet as the crow flies. Across the street is Mr. Blomley, is that right? And he did a great presentation laying out the landscape here. There's light industrial, which Perfect Equipment, which manufactures wheel weights for automotive vehicles from beryllium material. Next door to that is a warehouse district. You've got FedEx right next to that warehouse. Across from that is the new Schwann building going up. These are all very good companies in that area that are light industrial and bring good jobs to the area. Amazon brings good jobs as well. Going heavy industrial is not going to bring better jobs. It's just going to bring a different buyer. So if this is an economic position to increase jobs in the area, then moving from light industrial to heavy industrial, in my opinion, based on what I see in the marketplace in the south central U.S., I cover from Tennessee to the Florida Panhandle to Louisiana and Arkansas, it's not going to bring any different jobs, whether they're making air conditioning units or they're making automobile parts. Mr. Taylor made some comments that I would like to address. There is an Exxon station going up across the street from the property he's representing. There is a Dollar General down the store. I'm not going to speak for my neighbors in the area, but I'm going to speak personally. I like having a Dollar General there. It brings great value to me, all right? Especially if I need some bleach right quick because, you know, I didn't do what I was supposed to do and clean something properly. I like having an Exxon station. My God, I don't got to drive into town out of my way to go to Kangaroo to get fuel. These are valued businesses that provide value to us as residents of that community. And we've staked hundreds of thousands of dollars in our property. So I would like to request that you deny this motion based on the noise and other types of emissions that come from here. There will be smells that reek from these. There will be oil smells. There will be pollutants that are tolerable within our limits, but they will bother the people of the neighborhood, both in mine and those across the way that are in the Elam subdivision. There was a rezoning that put this property that adjacents my neighborhood, and there are only people from my house to this property, there are only 5 homes closer than where I live. And there's nothing that's gone up in this PID development, and I fear the activity that's going to go there. As Mr. Blomley said, the further back you get away from Joe B. Jackson, the more heavy industrial restrictions are laxed. That's problematic for us in that neighborhood. So adding one more HI piece of property over here is not bringing value to this business environment that we've created. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments. Who'd like to be next?
Mr. Vice Mayor and members of the City Council, my name is Wayne Cole. I live at 209 Prairie View Drive. My home backs up to Joe B. Jackson, and unfortunately, I am probably the closest of any to this particular site. I, too, look forward to seeing the Exxon station open, the subway, I enjoy it, the dollar store. We can sit on our back porch and we can hear the trucks and activity from the companies and industry in that area at night. We hear sirens. We hear when the fire alarm goes off. But for this to be passed, I understood and I understand that there was a auto parts place that was going in there, which I would not be too concerned about. But going to heavy industry, I am concerned. And to pass something, pass the zoning regulation or to a light to a heavy industry, I think it would be to arbitrarily do that at this time. I would ask that you refrain from doing that until you know what is going to go in there or what people would like to go in there, rather than passing it and then individuals. May I say this? I rezoned some property in Lebanon. I was going to build some apartments, which I did. I had an individual speak for me. I'm not a good speaker. I had an individual speak for me, which was a realtor, and they asked him, well, why do you want it rezoned? And he said, well, the land will be worth more money. And when he said that, which was not true, I had the plans there. I was ready to show them, but the council did not pass it. I did the next month go and explain it to the council and had someone else speak for me also, and it did pass. But to go and pass this at this time, I would ask you to refrain from doing that. And I thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next, please.
Hello. My name is Joseph Edwards, and I live on Candlewick Court. First, I want to start by saying I want to thank the mayor, Mr. Lyons, and Mr. Crumley for helping us in the Summersby subdivision. I'm the gentleman that you spoke to about the the drainage issue that we had in all of our roads, I want to say, first off, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So I want to tell the rest of the neighbors here that are around here, they are good people. They will help you. So thank you all a lot for that. Miss Amanda, who is also a neighbor of mine in the Summersby subdivision, which is down Elam Road in between Elam, just so you guys are aware, in between Elam Road, down off Elam Road, in between 41, and it wraps back to Joe B. Jackson. So that's our property in the new subdivision in Summersby. And me and her have talked as well, and we represent that community. So we're similar to like them. We're within that bubble, if you will, with Mr. Taylor's drawing of it within the 0.75 mileage of that. And she'd like to bring up a few issues with that we had. So thank y'all.
Hello, my name is Amanda Schultz. I live on Candlewood Court in Summersby subdivision. I just wanted to come with everybody else and say that I hope that you will vote this down, because there are, in our subdivision alone, I don't know the area a whole lot. I work in Nashville. I come home. I work. I come home. I'm, kind of in that limbo period in my life where just trying to keep up as good as I can do. Anyway, Summersby, when we first built our house, we were the first Fox Ridge house in that subdivision. There was another developer that had built other homes, which Joey lives in with his family, and there were, a small handful of homes in the neighborhood. They have since finished out the first phase that my home was built in, finished out just about the second phase. I think they have 1 or 2 lots left. Then there's a third phase that they've gotten started on, and there's a fourth phase. And so there's probably at this point close to 1,000 people that live, if you consider maybe 4 people per house, in my subdivision alone. That is, I think it's maybe just a little bit over a half a mile away from this proposed heavy industry site. As it is right now, and when I have my windows open, I can hear from the FedEx. I can hear the trucks beeping. I can, see the lights. There's a very large group of trees between my home and the FedEx, but I can still hear it. I'm not sure what the caveats are for the noise pollution part of the light industry, but it's nothing that I would raise an issue about as far as trucks beeping. That could be the garbage truck on my street. There is the drainage issue that I'm already having to deal with. I live right next to the detention pond. My backyard is like a river when it rains, somewhat heavily. If you couple that with the potential for more pollution coming from these heavy industry plants, no one's going to buy my house if I ever have to sell it. Property value is going to significantly decrease. Insurance costs are going to increase because of the chance of, an accident, an industrial accident, the increased likelihood of that. Possibly a good, we only have a Subway on that side, so possibly one thing that maybe could be considered is some restaurants or some other, valued businesses. The company that I work for, we designed the Perfect Equipment building. So I kind of feel like, a sense of pride when I drive down Joe B. Jackson and I see that and I know that I worked on that. And I kind of would like to be able to just have that sense of my whole neighborhood, that we can all drive around in our neighborhood, know that we have taken part in making it a better place for our kids. 2613 Candlewick Court.
Thank you, ma'am. We want to look into those drainage issues for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. My son, also goes to Whitworth Buchanan, or John Price Buchanan Elementary, and that is one area of concern for us and a lot of the other parents of the elementary and middle school kids in that area. And I remember somebody saying at one point that there was a proposal for a high school to be built back behind the middle school as well. So that's something else that we'll have to keep in mind, I guess. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Margaret Fuller, and I'm from Gary, Indiana. My name is Margaret Fuller, and I'm from Gary, Indiana. And I don't really like the idea that these different, what am I trying to say, the different companies coming in, you know, and mess up the neighborhood. I came from Gary because, it was U.S. Steel, and they made steel. And then you would smell the smoke and the dust and the noise. And so I came to Tennessee because my daughter was going to college here, to school. And I would come and see her. And so I came out to look at some of the houses around here. And I like the air. And my home is on 4806 Manchester Pike. Now, the way you are, I understand it. A lot of this would be around my area, and I don't want that. I really don't. And I'm wondering, too, what they want to pay me, what I paid for my house. I just like to know that. You put all this stuff in here, then if I get ready to sell my house, will nobody want to buy it? Will nobody want to buy my house? I paid $148,000 for my house in cash. I did, because my other house I had more than enough to pay for it. So I want to know, would I get the value of my house? I'm a widow now. My husband passed away before we could even move here. And I just want to know, are you telling us the truth? That we won't hear no noise, no smoke? Would you want to live in a place that smells? Would anyone of you all out there, would you want to live like that? I know I don't. And I would have never bought this house if I would have known you talking or thinking about putting up something like this. It makes me very angry. It do. You do. People in them don't care. Only things people think about is money. Money. And you heard a lot of poor people that's trying to make it. But you're all sitting up there. What do you live? What era do you live in? Think about the poor. Think about the poor peoples. Think about the peoples now don't have a home, living on the streets. Think about that. Money's not everything. It's not. It's not. Do the thing right. Live in your heart and be honest with people. Because I tell you, if you don't, you're going to see God one day. And that's the truth. Don't be so mad, so much money. Money's not everything. I'm going to tell you. We're all going to see God one day. And you know what? We're going to see his face. And I'm telling you, God knows all about all of us. All of us. My people's always told me, my mother and father, speak up for the Lord. Speak up the truth. Speak up. Take this home. Read John the 14 chapter. Read it. Listen. This world is not going to go on forever. And it's not everything. I'd rather be honest and true to people. Because I ain't taking nothing with me, and none of you all are. When we die, nobody going to get you in heaven. You're going to have to be loving God. You better believe it. I can tell you right now. I used to hear my mother say, you won't be able to tell the winter from the summer only by the budding of the trees. And you know what? 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was just like winter time out here. Instead of trying to hurt people, won't you try to help them? And you don't have to worry about getting it to happen. And that's the truth. You might not think or believe. Everybody say, don't put God in schools. Don't put him in it. And that's where God needs to be.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Katie Hucks. I live at 525 Myers Parsons Way. My husband and I, we moved to the area 3 years ago. It's over where Joby Jackson, where the bridges came in. And when we moved there, we didn't realize what was going on. And we love the convenience of it now. We have Walmart nearby. If we need milk, we can just go run over right now. And it's great. We have a 15-month-old little girl. I don't know if you heard her in the back. It's actually past her bedtime, so I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. But she goes through milk like no other, so we make a lot of trips. Just from that development there, the noise has gone up quite a bit. I hear sirens that I had never heard before. I'm concerned that if the zoning changes, what will come in? I see my house purchase as a lifelong purchase. I want to stay there forever. I want to have more children. I want them to be able to grow up and have fun and really enjoy the area. My husband, he lived over in the Walter Hill area where there was the dump, and it smelled terrible. And I would hate to know that we buy a house and then that's going to be coming up, something similar to that. And another thing, too, I work for the school district, and I didn't even think about the schools, but with the curriculum becoming more rigorous each year, I think that that's something to really think about with our students, all the testing that they're having to go through. If they're in the middle of TCAP and they can't get through it because of the smells or the sounds, then I don't even want to chance it. And then the spew about the permits, I don't even want to risk it to the permits, because once you put it in place that it can happen, what's to say it won't happen? We had a pretty good turnout, I think, tonight, and I want this to be it. I want to maintain my home the way it is now, and thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Samantha Cantrell. I live at 4258 Aurora Circle, which is in the Sunset Ridge neighborhood, and we open up directly onto Joby Jackson next to Interstate Warehouse. I just want to add my voice to the other voices that are opposing this rezoning to heavy industrial. I'm a relatively new homeowner. I bought my condominium in 2009, and I'm concerned now about the neighborhood, about increased noise, and I'm concerned about pollution and the aesthetics of the neighborhood. So I just want to add my voice to those in opposition of the rezoning.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name's Chris Young. I live at 135 Sherview. I think I've got a couple things that I haven't heard anybody mention. First off is the people that work in this area. They might not live in that area, but most people spend a good deal of their life at work, more than they do at home, unfortunately. So I'm sure those people wouldn't like to be working next to a heavy industrial place. Second thing is, back when the PID was in place, or going for a zoning approval, this board originally denied their application because they didn't have a set plan in place. So you set a precedence. There is no plan at all for this development. They just want a blanket cover. So just based on the precedents as this board set before, you should deny this for all the other reasons, obviously. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Tell them to give their full address, please.
Hi, my name's Lita Harden. I'm at 125 Callaway Court in Magnolia Trace. I wanted to, again, add my voice to object to this proposal. We recently bought in September of last year, and one of the things that I really loved that I came into this neighborhood was that it felt like a retreat. And one of the things that I haven't actually heard the words, but it's quality of life, that I think is so important for our residents out here. And one of the things that I didn't know when I purchased it, but the light pollution from Amazon is extreme. And so not only with the noise, no one's actually mentioned the light pollution. So I just wanted to add that to it. Just wanted to make sure that you guys are knowing that we love Murfreesboro. We live in Murfreesboro. We shop locally in Murfreesboro. This is where we want to be, and this is the quality of life that we want to keep. And so by offering like a carte blanche with this heavy industrial, I really would prefer that if you guys wait until you have an actual plan in place to say, okay, this is what's going in, and if that's something that's acceptable to the residents, at that point, yes, we might be able to move toward heavy industrial. But until then, just making a carte blanche change like this, it just really makes me nervous for the environment, for the area, and for the quality of life for those residents. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Chairman, Vice Chairman Young, and members of the council, my name is John Harney. I live at 6748 West Gum Road, which is about a mile and a half from this property right down the interstate on the other side. I'm here tonight representing the Elam Road Partnership in making this request. And I know a lot of people probably in this room and a lot of you on the council probably weren't around when all this property originally got developed. But to give a short synopsis of that, back in the early 90s, Bob Parks and myself put an investor group together and bought 3 farms in this area that together encompassed over 600 acres. We immediately started the development of Magnolia Trace, which a lot of these people are residents in. And at the same time, we started talking to the city of Murfreesboro about the need for another interchange and developing an interchange that was going after what we'd call the new age of industrial development. The older areas around Park Avenue, Haley Road, even Butler Drive were filling up. Those buildings were getting some age on them. We all thought on the south side of town we needed another way to get to the interstate to help circulation. Well, what that turned into was collaboration between the state, the city of Murfreesboro, council, planning commission, our partnership group to bring to fruition the Joe B. Jackson, basically job corridor. Elam Road Partnership donated over 17 acres for all the right-of-way that went from Manchester Highway all the way to I-24. I submitted a petition on behalf of the partnership in 2000 to rezone roughly about 180 acres on the north side of Joe B. Jackson to light industrial, about 150 acres on the south side of Joe B. Jackson heavy industrial, really not knowing exactly who the users were, but we knew we needed to create jobs. We thought this would be a manufacturing industrial warehouse area, and that was sort of the focus. Until about 3 months ago, less than 3 months ago, I didn't realize that this little 21 acres was not zoned heavy industrial. I actually took a client in there to look at this property, the one that's been referenced, and staff informed us that this little triangular-shaped piece was actually zoned light industrial. Now, we came to the public hearing at the Planning Commission, had a car-related manufacturing company in tow, went through the Planning Commission, got that unanimous approval. After the Planning Commission, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that company pulled back. I felt like being completely transparent, our partnership being that way, we ought to inform what had happened. We have 2 more car-related companies that are looking at the same area. Now, a lot of references have been made to a lot of uses that we wouldn't want to see happen in the area and haven't happened in the area. I would beg the council to look at the fact there's been 140 acres zoned heavy industrial since 2000, 180 acres zoned light industrial. We are not ashamed of anything that's been built on Joe B. Jackson. In fact, we think it's been a blessing to the community. One of these farms was actually a relative of mine, and in the heyday, these 3 farms might have supported maybe 20 families. I checked with the Chamber of Commerce this morning, and right now on the Joe B. Jackson corridor, there's been generated about 3,600 to 3,800 full-time jobs and over 3,000 part-time jobs. Now, I think that's been a blessing to our community. We have every intention of making sure that what we've got to do with Joe B. Jackson continues to be developed out in a manner that I think certainly we're proud of. We've seen the websites, we've seen the handouts. I've heard a lot of people here reference uses that I wouldn't want to see happen on Joe B. Jackson. And what I'd like to beg is look at our track record, not the what ifs of what could happen. Now, noise, smoke, light pollution has been referenced. I think the city has control over that, virtually about the same amount, whether it's in commercial highway, whether it's in light industrial, whether it's in heavy industrial. But looking and listening to people and listening to some things that have been said over the last 2 or 3 weeks and looking at the flyers that have been handed out, we've come up with some prohibitive uses that we're willing to deed restrict this 21 acres against. Matt, can you throw this up? These are some uses that we're willing to deed restrict against. I'll add that these uses, most of these are probably like was referenced by Mr. Bromley earlier. They probably can't go in heavy industrial without a special use permit, but we don't want to see them happen on the corridor anyway. So we're willing to deed restrict, bring those restrictions, record them before the third and final reading to eliminate these uses even being allowed on this 21 acres. We want to be continued good stewards of the Joe B. Jackson area. I've lived on the south side of town all my life. I've actually moved 6 miles closer to this area since I grew up on Southeast Broad Street, and we actually have bought a home site in Oakland Farms and are now going to be even closer than where we live today. I would respectfully ask for you to rezone this. We're still going to pursue the same kind of companies that are already out there on the property today. We're especially happy to see the amount of jobs that are being created, and hopefully there's more jobs to come. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and I think certainly Mr. Taylor will if you've got them. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Baines.
Richard Baines. I live in Parkview Terrace here in Murfreesboro. I became interested in this project, this request for rezoning, because I found this on my door, and it's more like the sky is falling. So I got to looking around and trying to gather up some facts, make up my mind whether this is a valid zoning request, whether it made sense or not. First thing, Joe B. Jackson Parkway is designed to move raw material in, finished goods out. That's its sole purpose. It's designed for industry, both light and heavy. I moved here 54 years ago from Detroit, so I know a little bit about heavy industry and mostly the bad things about it. I've been in heavy industry, or was involved in heavy industry for 45 years. Director of Manufacturing and Engineering. So I know about the regulations that govern smoke, emissions, water, noise, everything, pollution. And so I thought about it. What has happened in the 54 years that I've lived here? I've seen industry come in, and Murfreesboro's got a fantastic track record. When you go back and look at what we've had, what's been developed, we don't have a lot of smells. Well, I take that back. Every once in a while I get a whiff of cinnamon rolls coming from Pillsbury. That's heavy industry. But aside from that, we actually get more smoke from fast food restaurants. We get more smoke from Kroger's parking lot on Saturday than we do from heavy industry in Murfreesboro. Murfreesboro's got a very good track record based on my experience in development of heavy industry and light industry. And so I think that we ought to take that history, our track record, and I know that the city planners and the city government is not going to shoot itself in the foot as far as the great and cripple the development of this city by doing something stupid or allowing a pig farm or a chicken slaughterhouse to be built on Joe B. Jackson Parkway. I trust the city government. I trust the planners that they're going to do the right thing. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. Anyone else like to speak?
Let me comment about Mr. Baines. I used to work for him at Samsonite when I was in college. So we go back a long way. He's a very smart, intelligent student person. He's absolutely correct. I don't think to calm your fears, as long as I'm on this council, I don't think that these people here or the planning department would ever allow anything to happen out along Magnolia Trace or some on that corridor that would adversely impact any of you. He's right. Joe B. Jackson was built for a reason. Me working for Milton Select for 33 years, I put the stakes in the ground for the power poles in your subdivision out there. It wasn't nothing but a field. So, and Mr. Harney is correct. You know, a lot of this stuff's been planned a long time ago. You just walked into it. So, I would hope that nothing that we do or the Planning Commission does, and Eddie and Doug are on the Planning Commission, they're not going to do anything to adversely impact you. I hope. I hope my comments will calm your fears. It'll be fine. It may be some inconvenience, a little bit, but growth is the inconvenience. You know, you're getting services provided out there that you never did have. Dollar General, it's come up. Dollar General, Subway, and probably some more. Well, you won't even have to come into town, you know, and you're paying county taxes and no city taxes now, but you're reaping some benefits that you know, Parks and Rec, you can do whatever you want to. And I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, but that's the reality of what's going on. This has been playing a long time out. And I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your concerns. I probably maybe have the same ones if I was out there. But it'll be all right.
Okay, who's next, sir? Sir, you're next.
Yes, my name is Sean Potter. I live at 2630 Applecross Court in Summersby. You're sitting here telling me I should trust you. I don't honestly know you. Maybe you are a trustworthy person, but I don't believe that any government has my best interest in mind. So I'm not honestly going to sit here and believe you. I moved here last year from East Hartford, Connecticut. I lived a mile down the road from Pratt & Whitney, one of the biggest manufacturers of airplane engines on the planet. Very loud. Very, very loud. Across the street from my property, less than probably 1,500 feet, heavy industry zoning. 44,000 seat college football stadium was put in there when I was living there. It wasn't there when I moved there. It was put in after. I don't believe that rezoning from light to heavy without having a particular definition of what's going in there is in anybody's best interest in that community. I have a 12-year-old daughter. I drive by that area every day to bring her to her school, which is probably about half a mile from there. And I don't particularly want a strip club or a porn shop or a slaughterhouse there. And I don't know that that's going there. But if you rezone it and say anything can go there, then anything can go there. Unless I come here every time something is proposed to be put in there. I'm not a government official. I shouldn't have to come here every time something is proposed just because you put a blanket statement on what can go in there, and it can be anything. That's what you're telling me. So I just want to say that I don't agree with rezoning something when you don't have a definite plan of what is going there. And that's all.
I understand totally.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Who would like to be next?
My name is Tony Engel. I live at 124 Callaway Court in the Magnolia Trace subdivision. I think the communities around me have, spoken their piece about how we feel about heavy industrial rezoning. So I'm not going to go into a lot about that, but I would like to point out two things. I do think it's a little disingenuous for them to throw up a PowerPoint and do like a half-mile radius, a quarter-mile radius, three-quarter-mile radius, and zoom in on their property, because if you zoom out from that, there's thousands affected by this. So this is not just something that's going to be affected by a half-mile radius. So I think I would ask that you not pass this and at least drive the area. Look in the area and see what's there before you just rezone this. And secondly, I'd ask that you not pass it and allow the developer to write in his prohibitions to the area before you actually pass it, so that we can have some assurances ahead of time that there won't be anything that would be detrimental to the area. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
If you've got some new information that you would like to add, please come forward, but let's don't everybody repeat exactly the same thing over and over again.
Mine was not a repetition. Two separate items.
My name is Richard Hancock. I live at 3628 Stevens Bend in the Stevens Bend neighborhood. My concern also is the noise pollution, light pollution. One of the reasons why I bought this home, my home, because when me and my wife would travel by before we bought it, it was quiet. And that was the main reason why, when you buy a house, that's usually the biggest investment you make. And granted, this might have been planned, but, I want to speak my voice because, I've made that investment. And granted, there's a couple of things that have been more convenient. I drive it to Nashville as well, so I take the back way off of Stevens Bend. The sidewalks are nice to walk, and that's definitely been an improvement. But I just think I'm obviously opposed to the development with it being heavy industrial, because I just think that could spin out of control. And when you make an investment like that, you don't want to feel helpless at any point. So I'm definitely highly opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? I'm going to close the public hearing unless anyone else wants to speak. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Blomley? We've heard a lot of good comments and questions from our audience tonight. Would you want to comment on some of the questions that we've had about pollution and noise, light pollution particularly, and drainage in the Summersby area, which I'm not sure has anything to do with this tonight, but it's a very legitimate concern for the people that live in Summersby.
I'd be happy to address some of those things, Vice Mayor Young. With respect to the drainage in Summersby, if the resident would like to provide me with her address after the meeting, I'll be happy to forward that on to our city engineer, and I'm sure he'll send an inspector out to take a look at the situation and evaluate the situation. With regards to lighting, back about 5 or 6 years ago, we adopted a zoning ordinance amendment that deals with lighting pollution, lighting design. We do require that for every development that comes in, every new commercial, industrial, multifamily development, they have to submit a photometric lighting plan that depicts that the lighting spillover is no more than half a foot candle beyond the property line. Foot candle is a measurement of lighting levels. We also have requirements with regards to the types of fixtures, how they are angled to try to prevent lighting spillover onto adjacent properties, whether they be residential or commercial. We try to contain the lighting to the extent possible on the subject property itself. With regards to noise, the city does have a noise ordinance. In fact, we just, within the last year, updated the noise ordinance, adopted a new noise ordinance. Ms. McGannon may be able to address that better than I could. I'm not as familiar with it, but I know that her legal staff did a lot of work in updating that over the last year. With regards to environmental issues, we do have stormwater quality requirements that our engineering and water and sewer departments enforce. So we will make sure that not only a site addresses stormwater quantity with regards to drainage, but stormwater quality as well. As far as air pollution, I don't know how much we get involved in that. That may be more under the jurisdiction of the EPA or TDEC. The state. If you had any more specific questions, I'd be happy to address them the best I can.
I don't know whether this is Ms. McGannon or you, Matthew, but could you speak a little to this deed-restricted uses and how they bind under a general rezoning, or could somebody speak to that?
With regards to the request at hand, the deed restrictions are something that the developer is offering. It's not a part of the zoning that is being considered by the city council. It is something in good faith that the developer is offering. The city council is tasked with looking at the zoning classification and all that it permits, whether by right or by special use permit, and determining whether or not it is the correct zoning classification for that property. And as far as how the restrictions may bind the property, Ms. McGannon may want to address that.
As the council knows, it's not the role of the city to enforce protective or restrictive covenants. They do exist. Property owner puts them down to permanently or for the duration of the covenants restrict against certain uses. The issue is who has the ability to enforce those covenants. If an interest is given to any of the adjacent property owners or to the city in terms of an enforcement action, that would be where they would be binding. But as Mr. Blomley pointed out, we are not allowed in Tennessee to do contract zoning and bulk zoning, so that cannot be made a condition of the zoning. As a voluntary act of the owner, it is totally consistent with law to do so.
In violation or expanded use of that, what does that mean legally? Does that mean that they would have to pursue that in a court and a private action?
Yes. Enforcement action would be a civil action from people who had the right to do so, if there was a violation of the covenants. The language of the covenants would be important in terms of how long the prohibition was and who had the ability to enforce.
Go ahead. You have some? Go ahead.
I don't. Just stay up there.
Our nation, all over our nation, we all witness on the news every day in the papers, whether TV, papers, any type of media. We are witnessing situations that are splitting cities. Murfreesboro I strongly think, is a great place to live, and definitely the quality of life for all residents is something that our council is very committed to. If you followed us as we did our budget, we went through things that are important to the city and to you as taxpayers, and I'm a taxpayer. In making decisions while I'm on this council, and I'm sure everyone on the council feels this way, I want to always see us, and I know it's not going to always be possible, but see us at least come together and meet somewhere in the middle on issues where we can relatively be happy. I know you don't realize this, but we have a lot of tough decisions we have to make on the council, and but citizens' input is very important. Right now I'm a little torn on this situation. In fact, I'm very torn. I have some concerns that things that were on the list of being in this area, that if we approve this, some of the businesses, some of the industries that can go here, definitely you would not want, and me as a resident would not want that in my neighborhood or close to me. I'm also hearing the PowerPoint showed a mile away, and then residents are getting up saying, no, my house is much, much closer. So these are some concerns among others, and I'm not going to go into all of the details, but I'm going to make the statement that I would like to see this deferred. I would like to see a list. I'm kind of a put it on paper type thing. My son will tell you this. I'd like to see a list of things that we say will not go here. And because that's a big concern I'm hearing from the residents. They don't want this, don't want that, don't want this. And if we can have a list when we approve or disapprove of what we are actually approving, that in more details, I would like to just see us defer this and see this list. And I think that's a big concern, what's going to be there. And then we act on it. So if there are no more comments from the council, I'd like to make a motion that we defer this and see some of these things taken out that right now can be there before we approve it. And plus, I would like to drive out there and see this area myself.
Have a motion?
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
We got some more discussion.
Mr. Smotherman, please.
When I look at this property on Google here, I see their primary neighbors as being Swan, NHK, Amazon, FedEx, all of which I'm sure have thousands of jobs. And whatever's developed here will be job creation as well. For all these neighborhoods to be successful in the future, we have to have jobs. So this will be developed as something. And we know that the city's changing. The 2035 plan shows so much tremendous growth in our community. Just down the road from this, if you follow Joe B. Jackson on around, there's a Walmart store there. I won't ask everybody to raise their hand who said, I'm against Walmart's coming to Murfreesboro, who has shopped there since that one opened up. It's part of change. It's part of progress. But what we're doing is you know, there's always something that's close to your neighborhood that you would be opposed to. And this is already an industrial area. It's not an industrial area that's being created tonight. This area was built to be industrial. As they said, raw products in, completed products going out. Something will go in there, probably automotive, because you know we're close to Smyrna, Tennessee, home of Nissan Motor Manufacturing. It will probably be automotive. But you know, I'll almost guarantee you that it won't be a chicken refinery and it won't be a huge adult bookstore. That's not characteristic or in the nature of what this developer has developed in the past, nor would it coincide with Joe B. Jackson as it has been developed. It just doesn't make sense to sit out there and holler this Chicken Little theory of this terrible thing's going to happen and the sky's going to fall, when the reality of it is this neighborhood that is developed around there had to have known that there was Amazon down the street and that there was more industrial development coming. As far as smells, drainage, light pollution, and noise is concerned, those are things that we do control, and if we don't, the state does. There's people in Murfreesboro who call us and complain because the smell's coming from the dump. Those neighborhoods were built, most of them, since the dump was started out there. We hear complaints that the airport's making too much noise. I live in North Murfreesboro, walk the neighborhood about 11 o'clock usually every night, and I hear the noises from Memorial Boulevard, from Northfield Boulevard, from where the new Walmart's developed over on Northfield. I hear the airplanes at the airport. Sound travels a long ways. It really does. It doesn't have to be in your backyard for you to hear sound. As far as when it's cloudy or not determines how much light gets reflected off the lights coming down. They can say what the candle power is when they test it. But ultimately, after it's rained and those lights are reflecting off the parking lot and the light goes back up into the air, the clouds glow in North Murfreesboro now with our new Walmart store over there. So there are impacts to your neighborhood. There are changes that take place within every part of Murfreesboro every time something develops. When this was approved on the Planning Commission, which was mentioned earlier, I'm the one who actually made the motion to pass it, and obviously there weren't very many people there in opposition of it. I don't know if it was because everybody wants an automotive place there, or if this flyer that went out and scared everybody to death of what could be there. I'm confused as to why so many people are so concerned now, and I'm not confused by it. I know your homes are close to it, and you're developing your homes, and the public hearing's closed, sir. I'm sorry you can't, but we hear you. We do. We're concerned. We're listening, but we also have to plan and develop our city. And if it were an easy job, it would just be a matter of coming up here and saying yes to everything or no to everything if you don't want anything to change. But it's not that easy. We try to watch developers, understand how their history develops. Is it complete trust? No, it's not. I mean, I was elected 3 years ago because I didn't have complete trust in government. I have learned a lot in the last 3 years. I've learned about runway thicknesses, pavement thicknesses, width of sidewalks, the amount of trash that's in our landfill system, and a million other things. But what we do, no matter how we vote tonight, and I honestly don't think we'll vote tonight, other than to divert it. But that's not the end all. The end all is what is going to be developed on this property and what would work well in this area that we're asking for it to be zoned for. And I think that we're with the developer that's developing it and the places that he had pursued in the past for this property, you have some idea of what it is that he's looking for to go on this property. So, the situation has changed since it was before the Planning Commission, because clearly when it was presented to the Planning Commission, it was presented that there was an end user. That has changed. And so, but this property is surrounded by heavy industrial property. And I'll assure you that I'm not voting tonight to defer this so that we'll vote on it later when you're not here.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you're welcome to come every week. I'd love it if you were here. The Pledge of Allegiance sounds much better when there's 100 of us in here saying it than there was with 7. But I'll close by saying that, you know, if we don't vote on it tonight, we'll be voting on it in the future, and we'll certainly do what we think is best for your quality of life and for the development of Murfreesboro.
Yeah, I'll make a couple comments too, and you know, the fact what Eddie said is that the situation has changed a little bit. I don't know that really would matter from a standpoint of is it the right thing to do or is it not. I'm going to tell you my gut thoughts on it, and then we'll go forward from here. But when I look at it, I feel very much like Eddie does. I mean, the immediate neighbors, they may not be exactly surrounded by heavy, but it's got a lot of heavy industrial right beside it. It is an industrial area. I was surprised it wasn't already heavy industrial. I've lived here all my life, and I've been watching this thing happen, and I'm just extremely surprised it's not already heavy industrial. And so I don't mind telling you, I am highly inclined to approve this, just because it looks like, it's hard to really say on some of these things where you feel like, well, what is your backyard? Is it a half a mile away? Is it 3/4 of a mile away? I don't mind talking to you about it, but I don't think it was disingenuous at all to put us a radius out there to see how many people are impacted by how close of a radius it is. I think that was helpful to me to see, how many people we talking about that are in a mile of this thing.
All Googled it.
I had it on my map for the exact same reason to try to figure out, well, where is the closest house? How are they being impacted? This is literally surrounded by industrial, whether it's heavy or light. I'm going to also respect Madeline's comments and Eddie's comments that things have changed, and I'm telling you where I'm at on it, so you don't think that I'm going some different direction on this. But if Madeline wants to go out there and take a little closer look at it, might be a good idea to have Shane here, just as a 7th person, just to make sure that he's gotten to hear, and think on this stuff since the public comments, where he can read through them and think on these things. And so I'll second Madeline's motion to defer it, and we'll get it. But I'd say we'll get it right back on and be pretty prompt about voting on this if we can do however we need to set that up.
And I'll
get it back on the agenda.
I'll concur with that, but let me be very. I don't mean to be ugly, but working with Milton for 33 years, I know that land like the back of my hand. There's some good tree buffers back in there. There's some gaps. There's some gaps and whatever's. But knowing Mayor Jackson, working with him the way we did, this was already, that man, this was already thought in his head, way back yonder, about how that area was going to develop, the interchange, the whole 9 yards by job creation, just like Medical Center Parkway. So it is what it is. And we've already approved a concept plan for the Jones property. Right across the street at Manchester Highway. Paul Vaughn came up here real nice. It never happened just yet. And talking to the lady about the schools, we're trying to get them to, I shouldn't say this, give some land for a school, in that area. We were looking at fire and police and all that kind of good stuff out in that general area. That's what planning does. So it's not about not in your backyard. These things happen. And like I said, growth can be painful. I can tell you now. But we have to do what we have to do. And sometimes some people are not going to be happy. So, and I can live with that.
Mr. Shackley?
I just have one comment. One, I want to thank everybody for coming out. You know, one of the things that I think is important for us as a council to have people's feedback, and sometimes you don't necessarily feel like you've been heard if you don't get your way. But one of the things that happened tonight, I don't want to look over too lightly for you, is that a consideration was given by the applicant to look at a list of activities and use them as to calm your concerns about radical usage on that property. If we do vote tonight to defer, I would ask that if there are particular activities that you think might inhibit might be qualified under this zoning and something that you're concerned about, call Mr. Harney and see if that can be added. And then in this, if it's proposed again or when it comes back up again, let's have, as has been stated earlier, a list. And I think some of you might be, at least some of your fears belayed if certain dramatically intensive noise polluter are air polluters are restricted from that list. And I understand the issue that you don't know us and you don't know necessarily the developer and the applicant, so you don't necessarily trust. So part of our responsibility, I think, as a council is to bring people who are wanting to make development and existing property owners so that everyone has reasonable expectation of what's going to occur. And when this property, the road was put in, there was some reasonable expectation this was not going to be a residential development in this area. Even though your homes are in that area, you should have known and could have had a reasonable expectation if you had asked anybody that had laid that down, that property down, that the reasonable expectation was it's not going to develop as a residential area. So something else is going to happen. So let's see if we can come together. If we do vote to defer tonight, if you have particular concerns, the applicant has thrown out an offer for you to see that list. Let's see that list and look at that and see if that doesn't belay some of the fears that we have as we move forward, if this thing does happen to move forward. And I'd call for the vote.
Okay, we have a motion to defer on the floor and a second. Ms. Wright, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. All right, thank you. As the old mayor used to say, you're free to go or free to stay.
Where we are.
Just go on with the next.
Okay. Never. Wait a minute. Yeah. Our next item of business is our monthly update from Ms. Beth Dunfield, Vice President of the Workforce Development for the Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Beth.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Young and council members, and I want to thank Mr. Lyons for inviting me to come to the meeting this evening to give you all an update. And Councilmember Scales Harris and I have great fashion design on tonight, matching necklaces. To give you a brief update on some of our work through the Rutherford County Chamber on workforce development initiatives. And Mr. Lyons has shared that the presentation I prepared is in your electronic handout. And I will pass these out to you. Just briefly, the reason that my position was created at the Chamber of Commerce under the Economic Development umbrella was as we continue to grow and develop new job opportunities in our community, we need to make sure that we have a strong workforce that meets the needs of our current employers and for those that will continue to move in and grow in our community. And just some of the mitigating factors that we have in relation to our workforce development plan, we know today that fewer and fewer young people are employed. There are significantly fewer jobs available for young folks today, really as a result of the recession. We are actually in a negative 14 million jobs for young people because of the displacement that was created by the recession. So there's not a lot of opportunity for young folks to work today. So really our workforce development plan has been created around the vision of the state of Tennessee in a couple of ways. The State Department of Education now requires students in high school to graduate with an area of emphasis, and that can be in an AP pathway. It can be in fine arts, ROTC, or our career and technical education fields. And in the state of Tennessee, they have designated 16 career tracks. In Rutherford County, we have 14 of those career tracks represented in our high schools. And the Chamber believes that emphasis on these career tracks will help our students in a number of ways. Today in Rutherford County, we have a 93% graduation rate from high school, which is tremendous. Students that are enrolled in those career and technical education pathways graduate at 98%. And a lot of that is due to the relationships that they develop with their teachers and their instructors and the opportunities that they have for work-based learning. So we have structured our workforce initiatives with our school systems around those career and technical education pathways and support for those. And I just want to highlight 2 or 3 of those that we have worked specifically with the city schools on. One being our after-school career exploration program, where we worked with our ESP programs last year and the Boys and Girls Club. And over 300 students were involved in those programs. They received a junior achievement lesson, and they received a visit from an industry representative around IT, STEM careers, healthcare careers, hospitality and tourism, and business and arts and audiovisual, many of the major careers that are represented in our community today. So the students got a lesson on career exploration over a 6-month period. They got an industry representative that came and spoke to them each month. And each semester, then, they took a field trip to one of those specific career industries. We took a group to Coca-Cola plant. They visited City TV and the city traffic department. And we had a 4th grader questioning plans on the bridge over Broad and challenged our traffic director. He was very interested to hear the plans that this young engineer had for him. And they visited the aerospace at the airport, and it was very impactful. Dr. Gilbert has been very supportive of that, and we will continue that this year. The idea being helping students understand what career opportunities are available to them in our community beyond the things that they're typically familiar with, doctors, lawyers, policemen, firemen. We want them to understand that we have great career opportunities available for them. Our second area program that we have worked with our community, particularly the city on, is our high school internship program. This was a program developed by the Chamber of Commerce where during the month of June this year we employed 20 Rutherford County rising seniors in 20 positions across the county. We had 6 positions within the county government, and we had 2 here in city IT. And so those students got a chance to actually, it wasn't job shadow. They had job assignments. They worked with Chris Lilly to do some networking projects across city departments. And the goal of the internship program was to help them explore different careers and to get that first job experience. As I mentioned, the opportunities for students to work is decreasing. And many of our employers are telling us that they're seeing that lack of employability skills in the workforce today. So they may have technical skills when they leave school, but they don't necessarily have those employability skills. So this was an opportunity for them to get that. So I'm very thankful to Mayor McFarland and to Rob Lyons and to Chris Lilly for making that possible for 2 of our students this summer. The final thing I just wanted to mention is we have been working in the IT area. We have a Rutherford County Tech community that has developed. That group started last September with the goal of helping to grow awareness of IT and tech opportunities career-wise in Rutherford County. And this summer we are hosting our second of 2 coding camps to help children from 4th to 9th grade understand what careers are available in programming. We know that in the Middle Tennessee area, about 1,000 jobs go unfilled in the tech arena, whether that's networking, security, programming, etc. And so we want children to understand what opportunities and the fun side of, they may play video games, but they need to understand that somebody's got to program those video games. So the 3rd week of June, we hosted a camp at Central Magnet for 7th through 9th graders where they programmed a video game and created a website. And next week at Hobgood, we will be hosting a camp for 4th through 6th graders. And that camp is free to those students. It is being funded in a partnership with the Nashville Tech Council and some Mott grant funds that are available through the United Way. So those students from Murfreesboro City Schools have been contacted and worked with through the city schools and invited to participate in this camp next week. So from 9 to 3 next week at Hobgood Elementary, if you'd like to see students coding and programming games and their own websites, please come out and join them. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. And if there's anything we can do at the Chamber to help, please let us know.
Ms. Duffield is doing on workforce development is incredibly important. We make regular visits to our large employers, and one of the things we consistently hear is workforce, workforce, workforce. So the efforts that she's doing not only with the schools, but a program to help soldiers who are leaving the military look for employment opportunities here is part of what she does. Working with our large employers about what their workforce needs is part of what she does. So the issue of workforce development may not be as visible as maybe some other issues in the community, but we can tell you from the folks who employ folks in Rutherford County, this is very important, and we're thankful for what she does.
We have a new website that was launched earlier this year for economic and workforce development at the Chamber, and it's rutherfordworks.com. And all the information about both our economic development efforts as well as our workforce programs are available on that website. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Ms. Duffield, can I ask you a question before you say? I see the tremendous number of job growth, the amount of job growth that we have in our community, and I'm always excited by that. However, I'm somewhat concerned by the number of companies that seem to be hiring employees either as part-time employees or contracted employees. When we, or you as the Chamber, approach people, how and what should we be doing differently in order to make sure that we're creating full-time jobs and jobs with benefits?
Well, I can't speak for the employers as they're developing and looking to come here. I know that in working with many of our existing employers, the trend has been that using staffing agencies as a way to give temporary workers exposure to the work environment to make sure it's a good match for the employer as well as the employee. And I can't say that that's not a bad idea, because I think the cost to onboard someone and then it is not a good fit can be detrimental to the organization and may not be good for the individual as well. We don't necessarily have a great deal to do with that, but I think the more that we develop workforce programs in partnerships with our educational partners here through the TCAT, through Motlow Community College, through MTSU, I think that we'll have a better prepared workforce where we may not have to have those opportunities for temporary workers moving into full-time opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Our next item is consideration of the Parks and Recreation Commission, a bid on renovation of the drainage and turf at Richard Siegel Park.
Vice Mayor Young, members of the City Council, good evening. I know it's getting to the late hour, so I'll try to be brief. We did open a bid on July the 1st for the renovation of the Richard Siegel Park turf and drainage. I came to you April 16th asking for engineering services, and we identified two things that was in the critical path. the drainage and the turf. The drainage, we've looked at the swales that carry the water off, and we've identified that those need to be reworked and that we need additional swales as well, in addition to French drains out there. For the turf work, there's a large layer of thatch, I explained the last time, that's holding water, and that affects the play of the turf. And we want to remove a large portion of that as well. Of course, a lot of this was caused by the winter kill that we experienced in 2014 and a lot of overplay, and we've made adjustments to the usage at the park, working with the different soccer leagues and making sure that we're protecting our asset. The bid that we opened, we did receive one bid. That bid was from Next Level Construction in the amount of $249,981.70. Lowson Associates, our A&E firm, reviewed the bid and recommends to the City Council the bid based on the pricing being within the engineer's estimate. And I've included the letter from Mr. Lee Davison explaining that, also a copy of the opinion of cost that they had worked up prior to the bid. I've also included the bid tabulation and the bid form, which shows the breakout of the drainage work and the turf work that's going to be performed. The funding for this project would come from the city's future capital improvement plan. And following this item, we have Resolution 15R30, which is a reimbursement resolution. And this would allow the city to begin the work immediately and obtain repayment when the bonds are sold. So it is the recommendation of the staff, administration, and Lowson Associates the bid from Next Level Construction for the renovation work at Richard Siegel Park in the amount of $249,981.70 be approved, and the mayor be authorized to execute the necessary contract documents. And of course, that would be contingent upon legal department's review and approval. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Very good. No questions. So we need to make a motion to pass this tonight.
Yes, sir. Ms. McGannon may want two motions, one for the bid and one for the resolution.
I move we approve the contract.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
I move we approve the resolution.
Second.
All right. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Who seconded that?
Council, I want to remind you that the Adams Tennis Center, the grand opening will be next Wednesday, the 15th at 9:30 will be the ribbon cutting. We want to invite you out and invite the public out to see this new addition to our city. It is definitely a great addition. I think one that people will be very proud of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is board and commission appointments. We have several tonight. We have reappointments to the Parks and Recreation Commission. We have Mr. D. Jernigan and Mr. Steve Shirley. Can we do these in one motion or can? Okay. Next is the reappointment to the Greenway Projects Committee, Mr. Troy Robinson and Ms. Anita Pirtle. And then to the Senior Citizens Board, Mr. Carmelo Gravanti. I'm sorry, I butchered his name.
You sure that's for tonight as opposed to just information for next time?
A letter went out on the 11th for a future appointment.
Okay, it wasn't.
It's just not on the agenda. Yeah.
That was not on the agenda.
I know.
Okay. Can we go ahead and approve it? Having not been on the...
If you wish to.
Okay. And Ms. Linda Roberts is also on that also. So one motion gets all of them.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, Mr. Shacklet, second the motion.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Vice Mayor Young.
Aye. Our next item is beer permits.
We don't have any tonight.
Wow. All right, the next item is payment of statements.
We don't have any tonight.
All right. Our next item is other business from staff or city council, staff reports. We are adjourned.